upon the ship, then heard explosions, which I take to be concussion grenades or sound bombs, and then there were opening fire. And because we didn't have any guns or weapons on our ship, fire came from the Israeli commandos. There was also a helicopter overhead. As far as the people on the ship, I could see them at first try to use just water hoses to keep the Israeli soldiers back, but that's all I was able to see before our ship decided to take off as fast as we could. Although we had initially agreed that we would all stay together and help each other, the captain of the Marmara told us to go on ahead and try to radio out, try to tell the world what was happening, that we were under attack. So we put our boat in full speed and tried to prevent or at least delay them boarding our ship. Unfortunately, we could not get any word out because our satellite communication systems were jammed. So after about 10 or 15 minutes or so, they were able to surround our boat and proceeded to board it. We tried to put our bodies in the way. We repeated that we're on an American flag vessel. We are unarmed civilians. Don't board. They had masks and guns, and they proceeded to violently board. They threw concussion grenades onto the boat. They used tasers on people, and then in general just beat people down that tried to put themselves in the way. We tried to prevent them from getting inside the boat. They broke the glass doors to get access to the wheelhouse. Anyone that stood in the way, they just beat them down. A young Belgian volunteer ended up with a bloody face. Just to give you an example of how they treated us, they grabbed me by the hair and rammed my head into the deck, and then were stepping on my head in order to cuff my hands behind my back and then put a sack over my head. And this is the kind of violent treatment that we were subjected to, as Israel says that they were as nonviolent as possible and they were the ones under attack. They immediately went for any kind of media recording equipment, telephones, cameras that we had, and confiscated those, and then proceeded to do their own recordings. I'm presuming it's the only recording that's coming out from their takeover of the ship.
Huwaida, I'd like to ask you, because this has been such a bone of contention and the Israeli government has so vehemently denied it, the issue of the first explosions that you heard on the main boat, did those occur before any Israelis had actually landed on the boat?
Yes. We had someone on watch all of the time on our boat just to see when they would start approaching. And so as soon as we got a call that their naval vessels are coming, we went outside on the deck of the boat, and so I saw the Zodiacs approaching the Marmara. Then they were up against it and immediately heard explosions. This was before, this was almost immediately after we heard we saw them approaching. So they really didn't have time to enter before we heard these explosions. Not only concussion grenades, but opening a fire. I can't tell you for sure if it was rubber-coated steel bullets, live ammunition. I'm not quite sure, but there was definitely an opening of fire before they boarded the ship.
And Huwaida, when did you hear that people on board the main ship had been killed?
This wasn't until much later, after we were pulled into the port of Ashdod. We protested even leaving the ship. We told the Israeli soldiers that we consider ourselves kidnapped. We were attacked in international waters. We were still 70 miles out from the coast of Gaza and nowhere near Israeli territorial waters, and we did not want to go to Israel. And so they picked us up by our hands and feet one by one. Some people walked, but others were dragged off of the boat, and then we were separated. So I didn't see any of my colleagues after that. They put me through different levels of interrogation, and it was one of the officers that told me that there had been casualties. At that point, we didn't know how many, and we still actually are trying to ascertain the whole truth about how many and who.
We understand from Turkish media 9 dead, 8 of them lived in Turkey, one of them a U.S. citizen. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that is the latest information that I have. We're still following up on it to verify, but that is the latest information that I have. And, it's worthwhile to say, because I know Israel's spin machine is working, and they're trying to say that we were violent and the casualties were our fault, but a few things. One, they were the initial aggressors. 2, they didn't have to attack because they knew we constituted no threat to them whatsoever. We kept repeating that. We told them we were unarmed civilians. We told them that we'd been checked at the ports that we departed from. And we told them also that we would be willing to submit to additional checks by a neutral body, whether it be the UN or the ICRC. We weren't hiding anything at all. And therefore, there was absolutely no justification in using this kind of violence against us. I mean, they sent out armed commandos to attack unarmed ships carrying only aid headed for the Gaza Strip.
And Huwaida, the issue of how they have treated the Israeli citizens that were on the boats, apparently in an even harsher way than they have with the international folks that were on the boat. Do you have any information on that?
Yes. Well, I know that they did try to move to prosecute 4 of the Palestinians with Israeli citizenships. One of them, a young lady, Lubna, who is an organizer with the Free Gaza Movement. They stuck some charges against them, use of violence and other things. But I think either they recognized that eventually these charges would not hold, the same way that they tried to say that we had weapons on our boats, and later they retreated from these claims because there were no weapons on our boats. The same thing charging these 4 with using violence would not have held. And at the same time, there was a sense of solidarity amongst all of the people that were engaged in this mission, and therefore the people that were detained and knew about the charges being pressed against these 4 refused to leave the country until these 4 were released. Yesterday, actually, there was a big demonstration at the airport, mainly the Turkish activists that refused to get on planes until they found out that the Palestinian citizens of Israel had been released, and they were supposed to be released as of this morning.
In the United States, the big questions being asked by the media, those that are covering this, is why you didn't allow them to check to see what this humanitarian aid was. And in Sharif al-Qudus's interview with the Israeli deputy ambassador to the United Nations yesterday that we played, he said that they could go on these ships in international water, the ambassador said, because if there is a threat, they are able to do that it is legal.
Never even asked to board and check our ships. What they offered is for us to give them the cargo and that they would deliver it to Gaza. And the response to this is twofold. One, it's really disingenuous for them to say that because they know that the cargo that we were carrying is precisely the cargo that they have not allowed to Gaza for over 3 years, and yet they consist of only basic supplies that is desperately needed in Gaza, such as water filtration system, books for universities, paper for schools, reconstruction supplies, prefabricated homes. They don't let these items into Gaza or through what they call their humanitarian corridor. Israel's blockade on Gaza is so comprehensive and only meant to keep Palestinians basically on the verge of survival, or so that one cannot say there's actual starvation. But it is not a life. They have reduced Gaza to a situation where over 80% of the people are in need of humanitarian aid, and Israel trickles in this humanitarian aid. So we are not interested in perpetuating this cycle. We need to campaign for an end to the policy that leaves Palestinians in need of humanitarian aid, and therefore we not only need to just deliver the aid through negotiation with Israel, we need to end this policy so that Palestinians can have access to the outside world, so that they can import and produce and export and build an economy and be able to lead a life with dignity instead of just living off of handouts. So that's very important to recognize. So them taking the cargo and letting it in would not have worked for 2 reasons. One, they wouldn't have let this cargo in, and 2, it's really about the policy that needs to be changed.
Was there discussion on the boat among the passengers about any kind of resistance to the commandos? Did you anticipate the commandos' reaction on board, their actions?
Well, we had agreed as a coalition, we had a few organizing meetings before we actually launched the flotilla. And as the organizing bodies, we had agreed that we would not resist with any kind of force. We would try to defend our boats as much as possible.